If there is such thing as winning a press conference, the new Sacramento Kings general manager Scott Perry did just that. But words are words. Action is different. For now, the Perry era is off to a hot start. You'll hear the best bits right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off-season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. I'm here in the ABC 10 newsroom. Just got back after hearing from Scott Perry for about half an hour inside of the Golden One Center. And it does feel like that fresh start that this organization, the fan base, the media, all of us needed, right? It was a overall optimistic, positive day. You're going to hear a lot from Perry. I cut up his 30-minute press conference into like his 7, I think, best sound bites or best moments of the podcast that I'm going to be or from the press conference that I'm going to be playing for you periodically over the course of this show here today. And I'll be sharing kind of my thoughts and my responses to everything that he said. But I wanted to start with just my overall takeaways from the press conference, being inside the room. Got the chance to ask Perry a question, which you're going to hear here in a second, and just be around the vibes of the organization. And looking around the room, there were multiple members of the Kings' current front office, which of course they're part of the staff of Wes Wilcox and Monte McNair, so we don't know if they're going to be sticking around. I did not see Kings owner Vivek Ranadive there. He was not part of the press conference in any way, but other important like team executives were there. Organizational executives were there. I didn't see any players. I think maybe Mason Jones might have been there, but there weren't a lot of players in the room, which was, I don't know. I'm not going to try and read too far into that. But with Perry specifically, like, again, I thought if there's a chance to or a way to win a press conference just by saying the right things and getting off on the right foot, I thought Scott Perry accomplished that. You're going to hear, I thought it was a very polished presser, very positive, very optimistic, which we need more of around this city and organization right now for sure. And what I really like about this presser is that Scott leaned very heavily on his experience, right? Which I think is a brilliant kind of strategy because unlike his two predecessors in Monte McNair and Vlade Divac before that, who Perry, remember, worked for 3 months back in 2017, Perry has this wealth of experience, right? Spent time in multiple different organizations. Most recently was general manager of the New York Knicks, spent time with the Detroit Pistons, with the Orlando Magic, even the Seattle Supersonics, right? So he has a wealth of experience in a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different situations. He also has tons of connections, former players, agents, coaches. Like he made sure to emphasize all of that in his press conference, which I think is the absolute right move and the absolute right thing to do. That is where I think this Scott Perry hire is that's the aspect of this hire that I think is the best for this Kings organization, the best for Vivek Ranadive and Kings ownership, because they went the route of someone who is a veteran, who is just experienced, who comes in, doesn't mean he's going to do the job perfectly, doesn't mean he hasn't had his mistakes in the past, but he is an established name with an established reputation in this league. And that's coming to Sacramento to ultimately try and fix this franchise that has been in a lot of turmoil, let's just say, for not just the pretty much the entirety of this current ownership status, but really the majority of its time in the history of Sacramento, right? There's only been a handful of seasons where things have gone right here. So I really like that Perry emphasized his experience a lot. I also thought, as you're going to hear, he was very political with some of his answers. Now, I think calling someone a politician or saying they're political with answers has kind of a negative connotation to it, like it's disingenuous. I don't think Perry was being disingenuous with any of his answers, but like you're going to hear when he's talking about Zach LaVine and addressing his comments about Zach LaVine and whether or not he can be a winning player, or how involved Vivek Ranadive will be in decisions. It leaves me skeptical. I was there thinking, okay, in the moment you're saying the right things, but these are the type of moments where I don't really care what you say that much, because your actions and the actions of the organization are what is going to speak the loudest here. So those are some of my major takeaways. Now let's dive into this press conference, and we'll start with what everybody wants to know about, which is Vivek Ranadive. You're going to hear my question that I asked Perry here. I asked him about if there is any sort of winning mandate or time frame placed upon Perry of when this team needs to start winning, if they need to get to the playoffs next season, like they had this past season. And also, you're going to hear Michelle Dapper from KCRA3 ask the question directly about how involved Vivek is going to be in decision making.
My question has to do with timelines specifically. Last season there was a bit of like a planned playoff mandate kind of on the organization and the position that they were in. Has it been expressed to you from Vivek, from ownership, about any kind of expectation of winning right away or giving you the time necessary to fix the shit?
The expectation is to build a sustainable winner, and do the things necessary to create an environment that will breed that. And that's the only mandate. And so I'm going to do what's best, what I see is best for that. Obviously, I'm someone who's wired to win. So, again, we'll see what unfolds over the next coming months. But I'm going to do my very best to enhance what's here right now and see where it takes us.
With all this, just how closely are you going to be working with Vivek with all of these decisions? Has he given you full control to say, I'm going to hire the coach, I'm going to add these players to the roster, or do you plan to work with him?
Look, obviously Vivek owns the team, and I've worked with Vivek before, and I enjoy a very healthy and positive relationship with him. But make no mistake, he has empowered me to lead this team and make critical decisions. Now, will I talk to him often about different things in this team? Absolutely. It only makes sense. There's a saying that will be prevalent throughout my tenure here and within our office. I want diversity of thought, but with unity of purpose. And that's what we're going to be led by. And so that starts with my relationship with Vivek.
Now, I want to acknowledge before I break down what Perry said there, or share my thoughts on what Perry said there, that really there weren't too many things that I was going to be able to take away from any of Perry's comments about ownership and ownership involvement and timelines or mandates or anything like that. That was positive, right? Like, almost everything that I was going to take away from it, it was either going to be, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, or alarm bells going off, right? So it's a tough position for Perry to be in, and this is kind of part of the job that he's inheriting, right? Is kind of the reputation of the organization, the reputation of ownership, and Perry being the next part of that. Is the wheel, the cycle going to continue in a negative way, or will Perry be the difference maker? Will he be the one to kind of break that cycle? So I wasn't looking for reassurance really from Perry, because if he had come out and outright said Vivek is not going to have any involvement whatsoever, it's just going to be me, I would either be naturally skeptical about that, like, no, that's not going to be the case. Of course, that's not going to be the case. Or I would have just wanted to, like, I'll believe it when I see it. Show me. Don't just tell me. Show me. I want to see that over the course of your time here in Sacramento. So I acknowledge that before kind of diving into my breakdown of this. I don't think Perry said anything wrong here whatsoever. You might have, if for audio listeners, when I was asking that question of Perry about like any kind of timeline or mandate, he was shaking his head the entire time, like making the body language suggested like that's not the case. I've not been put on you have to make the playoffs this year type timeline or anything like that yet. And And then when answering Michelle's question, of course, he made sure to emphasize, and he did it a number of times over this press conference, that Vivek is empowering me. Like, we're going to interact. We're going to talk to each other. He's going to be involved in decision making, but I am the one that's empowered to make the decisions to fix things, to get us on the right track. So we have to hold him accountable to those words, and we have to take those words for what they are and appreciate them for what they are. So again, I'll believe it when I see it. When it comes to how involved Vivek is, Perry kind of shared one of his sayings there at the end, talking about like diversity of thought, but like everybody being on the same page when it came to their purpose or their goal. It's been an issue in the past with this organization of there being too many voices, too many thoughts. So we'll see how true those words stand up, or if Perry gets annoyed with too many voices of advisors or Vivek or Anjali or whoever it may be, coaches, like whoever. So it kind of just wait and see. But I don't think Perry's necessarily said anything wrong or concerning uh, when talking about his relationship with ownership. We still got so much more to get to. Of course, he's going to talk about the coaching search. He's going to talk about team identity. Gave a really, really good answer to a question about what the identity of this team is going to be. Talks about meeting with players, addresses his comments on Zach LaVine being a winning player. So much more coming for you on this episode of the Locked On Kings podcast that I'm very excited to share with you. But before we keep going, like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Hopefully we can get that back here in Sacramento. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Their last minute deals are incredible, right? I'm not just like blowing smoke. I'm telling you, their deals are nuts. And you can monitor like 2 hours, an hour, even 30 minutes before a game starts and watch the price just keep on dropping. Plus, their all-in pricing means there's no surprise fees at checkout, right? The price that you see when you select your seat, that is the price that you are paying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So naturally, the coaching search was on the top of everybody's mind. In fact, it was the first question that Perry was asked. James Ham of the Kings Beat, ESPN 1320. He was the first one to ask a question, and it was immediately about Doug Christie and the coaching search. Here's what Perry had to say about that.
Well, you're looking at a guy who's a veteran of so many coaching searches, I can't even count them right now. But what I can tell you is I've spent time with Doug Christie already. I first met Doug Christie when he was a player at Toronto. So I admired him as a player, his career. I've watched him this year from afar in terms of his ability to have a presence on the court. I think he's made a connection with players. We've had a few conversations up to this point. He was one of the first people I met with yesterday when I got into town. So I've only been here a little longer than 24 hours. With that said, my phone has incessantly rang for interest in this job. So I'm going to have a few more conversations in and around about this job. And hopefully I can come to some sort of resolution within the next week or so in terms of having a decision or announcement to inform everybody of.
So a couple things I really liked from this answer from Perry. The first thing is, as you can hear right away, he talks about his experience and his connections, right? Talks about how long he's known Doug Christie and how many coaches around this league that he knows. Again, leaning on that right away, which I think was really, really good and really smart of him. I also really like the fact that he didn't commit. Like, I would have been more concerned by a commitment to Doug Christie today. Like if Scott Perry stood up there and said Doug Christie is going to be our head coach going forward, that would have sent off alarm bells in my head of ownership already decided it. And this was a done decision when he accepted the job. He knew when he accepted this job that Doug Christie was going to be the head coach and he would just have to accept it and deal with it. The fact that he's saying he didn't, of course, rule Doug Christie out. He's talking about Doug Christie, in my opinion, as if he's a front runner to get the job. They've already met. They've already talked about it. But he's going to have other conversations with other coaches and other people about it. Other people have already reached out to him about expressing interest in the job. So what that tells me is that Scott is going to do his due diligence. And it sounds like we're going to get an answer pretty quickly. He mentioned like in the next week or so, having an idea of who the head coach is going to be. So I'm very happy to see that he's going through the process. He's having conversations. He's taking a little bit of time, but not too much time to ultimately make this decision. So I thought that was a really, really encouraging, really good answer from Perry about the coaching search. I've been talking a lot here recently on Locked On Kings about how important it is for the Kings to establish an identity, right? Like I said, that's a must for Perry by the end of this season, is to have a clear identity established and have a roster that reflects that identity. Perry talks about this roster and the identity that he wants to set, the precedent that he is setting for players and really everybody in this organization.
I'm just learning this roster. Again, I've watched them from afar. There's some talent here. There's an obvious need. I think everybody in this room probably would agree to it, that there's not a true point guard on the roster. Also, as I assess it from afar, I think we need to add more length and athleticism to this group to enhance some of the talent that's here. So that's, from that standpoint, that's kind of what I'm looking at doing right now. And the second part of your question was the identity. Any successful pro sports organization, or any company for that matter, has to have an identity. And that's one thing that I don't see here yet, but that's what I'm all about, is establishing an identity. What does it mean to be a Sacramento Kings player? To play here, we're going to require toughness. We want a defensive orientation. We got to play extremely hard, and we got to play together on the offensive end. Share the game is what I like to say. We got to be professional, we got to be disciplined, and we got to have accountability. And so if you fit that profile, you'll see guys wearing that Kings jersey. If not, then we'll figure out how to get guys in here that do. And a line that you may hear me say, and you may have heard this before, I am looking for volunteers to that, not hostages.
All I'm saying, this is like popped into my mind while I was listening to that back. Everything that he just said there, almost everything that Perry said about what he wants this identity to be, falls in line with Doug Christie. Now, I'm not saying that he's adapting his identity to Doug Christie or anything like that, but Doug Christie might be the ideal candidate for Perry, regardless of ownership's decision or not, or if they are influencing the decision or not. Like I wrote them down: toughness, defense, playing hard, playing together, professionalism, disciplined, accountability. A lot of these words, maybe we can scratch out accountability a little bit because that was a big word of Mike Brown and we saw where that got him. But toughness, defense, playing hard, playing together, professional discipline, like these are all words and things, like mantras of Doug Christie that he tried to establish over the, let's call it 2/3 of a season that he was here as the interim head coach. I talked to you a lot about on my most recent Locked On Kings podcast how important it is for everybody to be on the same page with this identity. Front office, ownership, coaches, players, they all have to fit into that identity. It has to make sense. This makes sense. Doug Christie, at least based off of these words from Scott Perry, Doug Christie makes a lot of sense. That dawned on me while I was listening to that. We'll see if Doug is the hire and if there's maybe a better fit for those words that he can find out there. But boy, does Doug Christie make a lot of sense. I also thought it was interesting. He brought up the need for a point guard, and length and athleticism. Gee, it's almost like it's been a problem that the Kings have had for years, that the past front office never addressed, even though they talked about it too. So hopefully Scott Perry doesn't just talk about needing length and athleticism. Hopefully he actually goes out and finds it. But I thought those comments, especially about like what he's looking for and how Doug Christie fits in with that is really, really important. I'll squeeze in one more. Here's Perry talking about this current roster and wanting to meet with players. The plan's on meeting with players, every single player on this roster currently over the course of this offseason before making decisions about their future.
I'm going to be opportunistic and prudent in doing this. I'm learning all the players just like they're getting to learn me. And I'm going to spend a lot of time with a number of them this summer and just make sure that we're equally aligned about where we're headed, because I'm going to be steadfast in my resolve in getting to where we need to get. And again, I want to make sure that they're in tune and in line and that they want to be on board with that. So that's what I would tell you right now. There's some good talent here. I've had an excellent reception from all the players thus far. I've talked to every single one of them, and they all seem very positive and ready to go. They like the community here. Obviously I'm sure there was frustration that the season ended the way it did, but I'd be disappointed if they weren't frustrated. That's part of it.
Yeah, I like that. Like, meeting with these players, having good conversations with these players, like have a conversation with DeMar DeRozan. Be straightforward. Where's everybody at, right? Does DeMar fit those identity traits? Plus, where's DeMar at with his career, and does it line up wise with what Perry and the Kings want to do? Like, again, nothing wrong, I think, with what Perry said there when talking about the players and meeting with the players. I'm going to play for you in just a second his comments on Zach LaVine. This is kind of an area where he gets a little bit political with his answer, because if you don't know, he had some things to say on either his podcast or on ESPN about Zach LaVine and whether or not he can be a winning player. So the Perry addresses that. Also talks about everybody in the organization looking in the mirror, saying a lot of things that we heard Mike Brown actually say when Mike Brown was hired as the head coach of the Kings 3 years ago or whatever it was. That's all still coming here on the Locked On Kings podcast. But before that, I want to tell you now another great sponsor here of the show. I'm talking about Amazon Fire TV and their Fire TV stick. Did you know that Fire TV is also an Xbox? That's not a joke. You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed, as easy as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. They have the latest technology for elevated playing, endless entertainment with 4K streaming. You can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Plus, affordable and portable gaming. Play high quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of any console. And if you already have a console, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games on the go wherever you can plug it in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. So when it was announced, quickly after it was announced that Scott Perry was going to be the new general manager of the Kings, a clip surfaced of Perry recently on a show speaking about Zach LaVine. And he gives Zach LaVine his flowers. Like, we know Zach LaVine can score. We know he's a great scorer. But is he a winning player? Perry essentially presents the question of, can you win games with Zach LaVine? He puts up all these great numbers, but does he actually truly impact winning? Well, of course, that clip kind of generated some interest and was a talking point, considering Zach LaVine is on this roster. Zach LaVine's probably the most secure player on this roster based off of his contract situation. And now Perry is his general manager. So Perry was asked about it, and here's his answer, whether you call it putting out a fire, dancing around it, whatever you want to say. You draw your own conclusions about Perry's comments on Zach LaVine.
Absolutely. I've had a chance to speak with Zach. I knew Zach a little bit well before I took this job. You know, when he was a young player at UCLA when he was coming out, I obviously scouted him and watched him a lot. Terrific talent, athletic, nearly a career 40% three-point shooter. And he and I, like I said, we had a good conversation. It's my job now to help put pieces around him and others to enhance his ability to start winning. And that is what you're getting at with the comment that I made, because it was a reflection on him not having won as much. It's nothing personal with me. And the great thing, what I enjoy with my relationship with all players, and that's why so many of them reached out to me, because they know, okay, I might not always agree with him, but he's going to shoot me straight. And they know that I'm going to provide radical candor surrounded by radical.
So kind of cut off that part at the end, but you get what he's saying. I like that Perry is a straight shooter. I like that he speaks his mind. I also know firsthand there are times and places where you can say things that in other areas you can't really say them, right? When Perry is paid on a podcast or on a show to share his opinion on players around the league when he doesn't have any ties to them, yeah, he's going to let it fly, let his opinion be known. But would he say the same thing? Would he have said the same thing if he was on a show now when asked about Zach LaVine? The answer is probably not. So I'm not trying to add fuel to the fire. I don't think we need to dissect everything he's saying or keep an eye on and the body language when the two of them interact in front of a camera for the first time and see what it's like, and is there bad blood or blah blah blah. I don't think it's that extreme or anything like that. But when you talk to being a straight shooter and accountability on this is things that have been attempted over the last couple of years here in Sacramento, and people have lost their jobs because they tried to be a straight shooter. Mike Brown was a straight shooter with De'Aaron Fox after Fox blew that game against the Detroit Pistons, got fired the next day. Like, Mike Brown was one of the few guys that actually practiced accountability. I'm not trying to make this a Mike Brown thing. I'm just saying we've seen people try and do this before, and it hasn't worked out. Now, none of them were the general manager. So Scott Perry can say he's going to shoot things straight as much as he wants to. Like, are you still going to be a straight shooter? Because there are clearly players and people in this organization that cannot handle that. So I hope that can either change, or I wonder how much shooting Perry is really going to do, how much firing from the hip he's going to do about his opinions and things like that going forward. This is where I want to hear from you. Like, what did you think of that answer? What do you think about anything that Scott Perry is saying over the course of this podcast? Share those thoughts with me at Matt George Sack on Twitter. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or of course, leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. But I'm sure we're going to have a lot of reactions to that quote about LaVine. Couple more sound bites for you. The first one, Perry talks about everybody. He mainly mentions the players here and himself, but really he's talking about from an organization standpoint, everybody looking in the mirror and doing some self-assessment about, am I doing everything that I can to help this team win and execute the vision here in Sacramento? And I'm not saying it's a perfect representation or the exact same thing that Mike Brown was saying. But if you go back and listen to Mike Brown's press conference when he was announced as the head coach, and he talks about the soul of the organization and everybody having to be on the same page, it sounds familiar to what Perry says here.
One thing I want all the players here to do, I want to buy each player a mirror, because at first we're going to look at ourselves. And that starts with me each and every day. And so there's going to be an accountability first and foremost, that am I doing everything as an individual to make this team successful? And then whoever we have in here to coach, it's going to be their job, and I'm going to be behind the scenes helping to make sure that we maximize what they can do on the court. The teams that I've been a part of, and I spent a long time with the Detroit Pistons, as you well know, and that team was built on accountability, was built on toughness, was built on defense, and was built on a team-first attitude. So when players come in this building, and when staff come in this building, starting with me, when I get out of my car and they get out of their cars, we're leaving our personal agendas and egos inside those cars. When you come inside, it's about the collective.
Again, great words from Perry. He's absolutely right, but I'll believe it when I see it. Not from Scott, but I'll believe it when I see it from this organization. Because again, over the last couple of years, accountability has been a buzzword around this organization. And yet when it came time to actually holding players accountable, people lost their jobs because of it, or certain players didn't like that the way that they were being held accountable. You can't talk to a player like that. You can't say that publicly to the media. You can't act that way in practice. You can't blah blah whatever. Can Scott will Scott Perry be the one that actually can hold people accountable and it not become drama like a middle school or high school? Guess we'll see. But he's saying all the right things. Finally, here's Scott Perry answering a question from Deuce Mason about why he decided to take this job and take on the challenge of being general manager of the Sacramento Kings.
That's been my life. I've loved taking on challenges, and if you followed my career, a lot of the organizations that I worked with when we first came in, they were struggling or non-playoff teams, whatever you want to call them. But then by the time we left, the organizations were better. I enjoyed that. I enjoy challenges. I don't run from problems, I run to them. And I think that's a necessary quality that you got to have when you're coming to build a situation like this. And I embrace it. And I think there's a lot of good people here within the organization. I think there's a lot of good people in this community. I understand a frustrated fan base. I faced that going into New York City, quite frankly, when I got there, and enjoyed every minute of that and being part of that turnaround there. So that's why I'm so confident in it. And again, my experience, my know-how, confidence in it, that we can do it. I've been there, done that. Feel really good about having the chance to do that here.
I wish Scott Perry all the luck and hopefully all the success in the world. Coming up on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast, something that I want to dive into a little bit. And I know I can already hear what some of you are going to say, Matt, get over it. He's gone. Get over it. I really wonder what Scott Perry could have done with De'Aaron Fox. We know Perry's opinion on Zach LaVine, so I have a hard time believing, even if that's what ownership wanted, that Scott Perry would have traded De'Aaron Fox for Zach LaVine. And I'm not saying the relationship was salvageable between Fox and the Kings organization and that Fox would still be a Sacramento King. I think there's a good chance that they can at least come together and have a conversation. And at the very least, with more time and more patience and the reputation of Perry and without the fear of losing his job over it, I think Scott Perry could have executed a much better trade than what the Kings made for De'Aaron Fox. So I want to dive into that a little bit, plus more other thoughts and things like that from Scott Perry's press conference. And now he gets to work, right? Now the work begins. So I'm looking forward to doing that on the next episode of Locked On Kings. The plan is to have that tomorrow for you. So I hope you'll join me for that. Again, leave your thoughts on this press conference today, the things that he said, things you liked, things you didn't like, how you're just feeling about the Perry era so far here in Sacramento. Leave your thoughts with me. I look forward to reading those and chatting with you more about that. Until next time, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.